Today I'm going to be breaking down and ranking Joshua Van's toughest tests in the flyweight division after he got a really good win over Tatsuro Taira, TKOing him in the 5th round. It was a really great fight between the two of them, and there's a lot of guys coming up in the flyweight division, and it's the perfect time to be ranking them. It's a very exciting division. It's the most exciting that it's ever been. So we'll start off with the easiest matchup for Joshua Van and then progress to the hardest one. The easiest matchup, though, for Joshua Van, it's going to be Steve Erceg. Now, I love Steve Erceg as much as the next guy. I'm an Aussie. I love watching Steve Erceg. He's got the clean boxing. He almost beat Alexandre Pantoja, but this fight would be so concerning to watch. It should be like 10-1 odds going to Van's way. Not because Steve Erceg's not skilled. He's got a really good skill set for the flyweight division. It's just Erceg's defensive hand positioning is probably some of the worst I've seen in the flyweight division, and it's awful, especially for how Joshua Van fights. Joshua Van, he's got a rocket of a right hand. Every time he throws it, it's at 100 miles an hour. It's going to ping your head back every time. And Erceg has an issue where he loves to leave his lead hand below his waist, and he likes to sort of bait you in and make you throw that right hand. If you remember the Brandon Moreno fight, every single right hand that Moreno threw, it looked like it landed, and it landed clean. And although that Steve Erceg, he's got the out of like the good grappling, really good scrambling, Joshua Van, he's got the defensive sprawl, and he's really, really strong. And the way that Steve Erceg grapples, I feel like a guy like Joshua Van with the lower center of gravity, he's going to be able to outdo him in those positions. He's going to be able to win the positions. And when they get back to the feet, he's just going to be pinning Steve Erceg's back repeatedly. And I think he stops him in the second round. I think it's a fight where Steve Erceg in the first one, he's shooting bad takedowns, he's forced into positions he doesn't want to be in, and Van would just start putting on the damage, and I think he would flatline him in the second round. I don't think it would be as bad as the Kai Kara-France fight, just because Kai has like next level flyweight power where he just shuts people off with one shot. And Joshua Van, he doesn't have that same sort of power, but it's the factor of Steve Erceg coming into range with his hand below his waist and getting pinned back every time it's getting thrown at him. So I don't think he's got any shot in beating Joshua Van. Now, the next most difficult fight, it is a fight that we saw recently. It's Joshua Van versus Brandon Royval, and I think that this goes worse than even the last time. Royval's durability, after getting the beating that he took from Joshua Van and then getting slept by Manel Kape in the first round, I think his durability is forever going to be a little bit lower than it once was. And Joshua Van, the thing is that in his fight against Royval, he was a powerful boxer then, but I think he looks more powerful now. He's throwing a lot more into his shots. He's stepping through on his punches nicer. And Brandon Royval, the way that he made it close was keeping range, throwing that jab out there constantly, and he showed next level toughness in that one. He's not going to be, and the thing is, he's not going to be able to grit down like he was then. And the thing is with Royval is that when he throws these strikes out, it's like he's afraid of getting slimed out by the next punch coming back at him. He throws and he's so far back. It's not like a Strickland where he's got that educated defense off his back foot. He's moving forward, but then he's throwing and like leaning away from it every time. And I think that Joshua Van, he would make better reads earlier and he would step off sooner and get a round 2 TKO a little bit later than he would TKO Steve Erceg. I think that would be in the first 30 seconds of round 2, maybe even in round 1, but I think Royval towards the end of round 2, we're going to see what happened in the third round of their fight, but maybe a little bit earlier into the round, and Joshua Van will get a ground and pound TKO over Brandon Royval. Now, the next fight, I think it would be one of the most fun fights to watch with Joshua Van included. It's going to be Van versus Lona Kavanagh. This would be such an enjoyable fight to watch while it lasts, but it would be a bad fight for Lona Kavanagh. For the first 2 rounds, though, this would be the biggest barn burner in flyweight division history. And I'm not even kidding. I genuinely believe that. The Charles Johnson versus Lona Kavanagh fight, that is to this day one of my favorite flyweight fights to rewatch. It's such a fun fight, and I think that this would be similar. Not similar in the styles, but similar in how the fight will look. Lona Kavanagh for the first 2 rounds, he's going to look like the best fighter ever. And we're going to think, oh my god, he's got all the tools to beat Joshua Van, because in the first 2 rounds, Lona Kavanagh, he's going to be beating up Van. I genuinely believe that. I don't care how good Van is. Because Lona Kavanagh early, he's like a Rafael Fiziev. He's sharp as anything. He's landing these massive body shots, landing some nasty kicks, leg kicks, body kicks. Maybe the leg kicks would add up against Joshua Van. He does have that boxing style, but his legs aren't as wide apart as Brandon Moreno, and I think that he's going to be the type of guy to land shots while Lona Kavanagh's throwing those leg kicks, taking the pop out of those low kicks. But in that first 2 rounds, Lona Kavanagh's going to be faster. He's going to be more explosive, going to be more powerful. But as soon as the pop leaves Lona Kavanagh's hands and legs in that second round, late in the second round, in the third round, we'll see the turning of the tide. And Joshua Van, he's going to outland him like he did to Tatsuro Taira in that third round. And Kavanagh, we've seen it against guys like Charles Johnson. He doesn't have the toughness, the grittiness, the chin that a guy like Tatsuro Taira does. And in that sort of round where I genuinely reckon you could give that round a 10-8 or a 10-7 against Tatsuro Taira. And I don't think that Lona Kavanagh lives through that. I think he gets smoked in that third round. And maybe he gets it done earlier, gets it done in that second round, especially if he's slamming some body shots. But he's just going to be way too dangerous in that third round. And Lona Kavanagh, I've just seen that he's not clean enough with that one. Now, he could get it done, Lona Kavanagh, in those first 2 rounds with really powerful shots, but I just don't think he will. And I think that Joshua Van, in the boxing especially, guys who are good in kick range, once that kick range has been broken, they're going to get slimed out. So Joshua Van, he's going to slime him out in the third. Now, the next one that I wanted to talk about, this one is Joshua Van versus Asu Almabayev. Now, I do hope that I never, ever have to see this fight, because this is such a fun division at the moment, the flyweight division. And Asu, he's sort of like the Pat Sabatini of the flyweight division. He's a genuine plague on the sport. He does have nice submissions. He got a good one over Alex Perez. But if he doesn't get that submission, the smudge is the entire game for him. And he does have a shot getting dominant position and holding it over Joshua Van. But I think that he would be happier. Like, the reason why I think he could stall and hold those positions is because he's happier than Taira to not progress through them. He's not going to go for any ground and pound, and if he doesn't get the submission, he is happy to just sit in a position. Like, we've seen Asu Almabayev shoot 16 times or over across 3 rounds, and against Joshua Van, he would probably shoot 20 to 25 in the first 4 rounds, but I think it would get to the championship rounds and Joshua Van would still be up on the cards 29-28. Maybe either way you could give it. But I think that Joshua Van in those first 3 rounds, he's going to take literally no damage. Asu doesn't do, even when he lands damage. I remember he overhand righted Jose Ochoa and it literally didn't look like it had even landed. And it was like flush straight on the chin. But Asu throws arm punches, and in those first 3 rounds, even if he does dominate in the grappling, he's going to use all of his effort doing that, and then he's going to have no gas tank left for those championship rounds. And Joshua Van, we've seen it, even if he is defensively grappling, he's a guy he stays smart, he doesn't do too much, he doesn't look like he's heavy breathing at any point. And I think that he would have way more in the gas tank, even if he does get dominated in the grappling, and he's going to get smoked out in round 4. Now, the next one that I wanted to talk about, this is actually a really fun fight. And people talk about this one like it's his stylistic nightmare, but I think it's Joshua Van versus Kyoji Horiguchi. Now, I want to see this fight so unbelievably badly. I love Kyoji Horiguchi's style. He's got one of my favorite styles in the UFC at the moment. But I also just want to see how, like, the crafty outside movement and all of the slick footwork that Kyoji Horiguchi has, I want to see that against Joshua Van. And I did say this just before. People talk about this like it's the nightmare matchup for Joshua Van. I think it's the complete opposite. I think that it's the nightmare matchup for Kyoji Horiguchi. And I think that Kyoji Horiguchi beats all of the other flyweights in the division. Maybe not Manel Kape. Maybe not. But I think he does beat especially all of the grapplers. I think that Kyoji Horiguchi has everything on them. But I think that this is a fight where Kyoji Horiguchi is going to be winning the fight until he's not. He would likely make, especially early, because Joshua Van, especially in those first round and a half, he doesn't put on the pedal too early. He likes to make his read sort of like a Petr Yan. And I think early on, Kyoji Horiguchi is going to make him a punching bag. And he might get some early takedowns. It might look like for the first 2 rounds that he's going to have a masterful performance over Joshua Van. But I think the longer that it goes, if he doesn't get the submission or the TKO over Van, I think the longer it goes, the slower Kyoji gets. And with a guy like Van, it's not terrible if he slows down a little bit. He's a more plotty guy. I don't really like using the word plotty, but his movement is more small, whereas Kyoji, his movement's very dramatic, very large, very big. And eventually, once he does start slowing down in those 3rd, 4th, and 5th rounds, he's going to make one mistake, and he's going to get dropped really badly. And although Kyoji Horiguchi's got great cardio, we've seen that time and time again, Van's style, it doesn't really slow down that much. Like, if you know what I mean, like his movements may slow down in moments, but his punch speed doesn't. His takedown defense doesn't. And like his will to win also doesn't either. And if Kyoji gets caught, I think he gets caught in the 3rd, 4th, or 5th round. And as soon as he gets caught, he's gonna get dropped. Because the way that Kyoji moves, it's such a violent footwork, it's such big movements that he's gonna be moving into the strike. Like, the way that he punches is like prime Robert Whittaker, where he's like shuffling in and out of range, sort of with the Taekwondo type of footwork. And if he gets caught, it's a straight punch. It's a straight right hand that Van lands, like taking his head off center line whilst Kyoji's coming in. And he's just going to get floored by the shot. And maybe he survives it until the next round. But I think that he gets dropped in the 3rd or 4th round and then gets finished in the 5th. Just because Joshua Van, he's got the style to be able to land on a guy like Kyoji Horiguchi, especially when Kyoji slows down, and I think it would be a tough one for Horiguchi to win, especially late. If he doesn't get the submission early, I don't think he gets the fight. Now, moving on to the next one, this one's a little bit of a fun one. It's Muhammad Mokaev. Now, I know that Mokaev is not in the UFC at the moment, but I genuinely think Mokaev would make a really good top 5 fighter, and he would give Van some problems. Because like Asu Almabayev, he would be happy to spam the takedowns, although he has less of a submission game. But the other thing, the big difference, the reason why, you can see it up there, I think that he would get it, he would make it to a decision. The reason why he would do so is because he's a lot better on the feet than Asu Almabayev, and he's got about 40 times the grittiness of Almabayev. We saw when Almabayev fought Manel Kape, he gets caught a couple of times and he's running away. Like, I think it was Chelsea Chandler that did that. And he's genuinely sprinting to the other side of the octagon. Oh, don't hurt me, please, get away from me. And you don't see that happen from Muhammad Mokaev. You see Muhammad Mokaev get his knee destroyed. Complete tear of like 3 ligaments in his knee in the 3rd round. He's losing the fight as well. Who was it against? It was against Jafel Filho. And he genuinely, you see his leg, like he's in a heel hook and his leg goes like that. And you know he's destroyed his leg. And he toughs through that position. He would have felt his knee tear into pieces. And he still comes back and gets the rear naked choke when he needed to get a finish. He's an absolute dog. That's one thing. You can call him boring. You can call him a ball sniffer. You can call him whatever you want. He is tough as nails. Tough as nails. Tough as anyone can be. And I think he would survive Joshua Van just due to the toughness. But I think he wins early. I think he wins like the first round or so. But then I think he just gets out damaged in the last 4. Maybe the second round's a close one where he's holding Van up against the cage, but Van's landing shots whilst he's going for takedowns. And then I think Van would get like a 10-8 round in the 5th round. Maybe get close to finishing Mokaev. But I think Mokaev lasts through the 5 rounds. I don't think it's going to be as competitive as a fight of Kyoji Horiguchi. I could see Horiguchi winning the first 4 rounds and then getting finished, or winning the first 3 rounds and then losing the next round, then getting finished. I think that Muhammad Mokaev, he would last until a decision, but he's going to get dominated 48-45, 49-45, 49-46 type of decision there. Now, we're coming up to the more difficult fights. It's the last 2 fights in the list. I think the second most difficult fight for Joshua Van, it's Manel Kape. And this would be a really fun fight. This would be a fight where I look at both guys and I think, damn, both of you can get finished here. And I think that Manel Kape is the only guy on the list that can TKO Van. Look, Kyoji Horiguchi's got a little shot, but I don't think he's got it. Whereas I think that it's like almost 51-49 or maybe like 60-40 that either guy could KO each other. And Manel Kape, the thing is about him is that he's at the prime of his absolute life right now. His win over Brandon Royval was so unbelievably impressive. And the way that he's been floating around the octagon, super patient, waiting for the massive shot. And when he lands it, he's shutting people down. And he is more powerful than a guy than Joshua Van. He sits a lot harder on his shots. And defensively, like his head movement defensively and his movement footwork defensively, he is faster than Joshua Van in that aspect. Even though I think he's over a decade older than Joshua Van. And offensively, one thing that Joshua Van usually has over every single one of his opponents is that he might not have the footwork speed of a guy like Horiguchi, but he has the hand speed over everyone. Watching him strike against Tatsuro Taira, his hand speed is unbelievably fast. I think that Manel Kape's just as fast. But the problem is, for Manel Kape, is that he's not that active on the feet. And I think that Joshua Van is very defensively sound for long enough. And I think he's going to be able to win rounds against a guy like Manel Kape. I do think he would get dropped and hurt once or twice throughout the fight. But outside of those moments, I think that Van's going to be able to win the rest on the feet just through outpointing him. I think he would get a close 48-47 decision win over Manel Kape. I think it would be clear though. Like I think that Manel Kape, he would have one or two good moments. But every round that he doesn't hurt Joshua Van, and Joshua Van's going to win by a landslide in those rounds. We see Manel Kape sometimes, he'll have like 20 strikes, 16 strikes a round where Joshua Van, he's landing 40, 50, 60 strikes a round. And I think that in those rounds where he doesn't get hurt, he's going to win them every day of the week. He could get a 49-46 win or 48-47. I think it would be close, but I don't think it's going to be one of those where it's like debatable, where one of those rounds is a swing round. Now, coming to the hardest matchup, I'm sure that you can gather who it is right now. It's got to be Alexandre Pantoja. Now, before the Taira fight, if you remember when I was making videos like this, I would have picked Pantoja every single day of the week. And maybe I'm going to switch up if they do fight. Maybe I'm going to do that. But I think that this is a razor close fight. And my main point has always been that Pantoja, he's been grappling, he's been doing jiu-jitsu for longer than Joshua Van's been alive. I'm saying that like a broken record. Been saying that for over a year now. But after Joshua Van dispatched Tatsuro Taira and he dealt with him in the grappling, he defended all of the positions, I think it's a lot closer of the fight. I thought I was picking Pantoja to win by a round 1 submission. Now, was I overestimating Tatsuro Taira's grappling? I was also picking Taira to beat him by round 1 submission. Was I overestimating that? Absolutely. Absolutely. His grappling when he was on top of Van, although Van's defense looked unbelievable. On top, Taira didn't go for ground and pound in moments. He showed his inexperience going for that triangle when he really should have just tried to hold position, do some damage. I also underestimated Joshua Van very heavily defensively. Joshua Van's defensive grappling, especially in the jiu-jitsu, I knew his takedown defense was good. I just didn't know his jiu-jitsu defense was that good. And he showed next level patience and cardio in positions I didn't think he would. And although Pantoja is another level to Tatsuro Taira, his back taking is another level. The way that he works for the rear naked choke, I think he's more likely to submit Joshua Van than Tatsuro Taira ever would be, especially after watching that fight. But especially if Joshua Van lasts the first 2 rounds of just grappling and pace and pressure, he is very good. But Pantoja, he is one of those guys that looks really tired. He pushes through super well, but he doesn't really look too clean in those last 2 rounds. And against Joshua Van, one of those sloppier fights in those last couple of rounds, he's going to be able to hurt Pantoja in those moments. He's going to be able to land body shots in those moments. And I think that although Pantoja, he does have better defense than Tatsuro Taira, and he's way more gritty, he's way more durable. Both of them are durable as hell, but Pantoja's next level with some of his durability. But I think especially after that elbow injury, the momentum, the time off, it's all going wrong for him. And I think that Joshua Van, although early I think he struggled with the grappling of Pantoja, I think Pantoja doesn't have that moment in the second round where he gets almost slapped by Joshua Van like Taira did. I don't think he has those moments, but I also think that Pantoja, in those last 3 rounds, we saw it whilst he was having those fights. He gets scrappy. He gets into like this mode where he's like a zombie moving forward. And I think that Van's going to be able to land more visible damage in rounds 3, 4, and 5. I think he gets backpacked for 2 of those rounds. 2 rounds, maybe the first 2 rounds, and then Van wins the last 3. Maybe the first and the third, Pantoja's able to backpack him. But I just think that this could be a split decision. And I think it would be. I genuinely I hate picking things like that because it just sounds like cope. But I think it would be similar to that Moreno versus Pantoja fight where Moreno is doing better on the feet, but Pantoja has moments himself. But the reason why Pantoja won that fight was because he was doing work in the clinch. He was doing work on the feet as well. I don't think he works that well against Joshua Van. And I think that Joshua Van in those positions on the clinch, he wants to get out of those positions quicker than Brandon Moreno would. And on the feet, he's going to be putting way more damage on him than Moreno ever could. And I think he's going to be able to win it by a 48-47 split decision where they run it back and have a third trilogy fight. I really do think that that's how this fight plays out. And then that third fight, I think Joshua Van wins by a landslide. I think Joshua Van is making improvements, incremental improvements, but he's getting much better each fight. Let me know what you think, though. Who do you think will be the toughest test for Joshua Van? As always, if you enjoyed the video, leave a like and a comment, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.